There's a very simple tool to make yourself happier, healthier, and actually more likable. And it's free. You don't even have to work hard and sweat like exercise. I'm referring to the practice of gratitude, being grateful. It's true, and the behavioral science is there to back it up. I'm Dick Goldberg, and on this edition of Insights, we're joined by Dr. Shilagh Mirgain. Dr. Mirgain is a senior psychologist at the School of Medicine and Public Health at the University of Wisconsin here in Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Well, now, is it true? Can increasing your gratitude really make you happier, and can it make you healthier?
It can, Dick. Gratitude is one of the most significant contributing factors to our happiness, and it is a simple and, as you said, free thing that we can do. And the research is pretty impressive. Gratitude has been found to be linked to a wide variety of psychological, social, and health benefits. For example, it's been found to boost our immune system, lower blood pressure. It also will increase levels of joy and optimism. It reduces lifetime risk for depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorders, and it really allows us to become more socially connected, feeling less alone and isolated. So all really good things.
As you said that, it sounds awesome, but I could hear a little skepticism on the first one about your health. Really? Your health? Mm-hmm. How can it help your health?
Research suggests that gratitude works through two pathways. One, it allows us to experience greater emotional well-being. The second is that it buffers against negative emotional states and emotions, so it basically makes us more resilient to stress. And if we're more resilient to stress, we can see that that leads long-term to those outcomes that I was talking about, such as stronger immune system, lower
that makes sense. We've heard about that in cancer studies and so on, that people who are depressed are more prone to not progress as well, or more prone to being susceptible to those kind of things. Now, before we get into all the specifics of how you do it, is this the same as like counting your blessings? Like Bing Crosby saying, count your blessings instead of sheep?
We could think of gratitude as an amplification of that, and certainly counting your blessings is a nice place to start. But we do find for people, when things go well, we start to take it for granted. And when things go poorly, we may become underprepared for dealing with them. So gratitude can help us not only appreciate those good times, but make us more resilient to thriving and surviving those more challenging times.
I read a little about you. And somewhere you talked about the 3-to-1 ratio. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, the 3-to-1 positivity ratio.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure, Dick. And this, I think, really highlights why gratitude is such an important practice. As humans, we have something called a negativity bias to our brain, which means that when negative experiences happen, they tend to stick to us like Velcro. And we tend to recall them more rapidly and with stronger emotion. And so even though in a course of a month we may have more positive things happen, when we think back over that month, what's salient about that month may be those few negative things. Great example, you could get a performance evaluation. 99% could be positive, the one could be negative, but that's what you fixate on.
Interesting.
So given this negativity tendency of our brain, we want to work on counteracting that and really drawing in positive experiences. And gratitude can really help us amplify those positive experiences and also help them more readily get stored in our memory, so that we're better able to recall those positives and also better able to access those positive experiences. So back to that 3-to-1 positivity ratio, we find that there's a tipping point of people who are thriving the most in life have 3 positive experiences to every negative. And one of the ways we can foster more positive experiences is just by noticing them, or as you said, as Bing Crosby sings, count your blessings. Because when we do that, we amplify our focus, almost like a magnification or a telescope on those positives to really soak those in, remember them, and that can help us tip more into that happiness and thriving in life.
I do some couples counseling, and have heard John Gottman, who's the guru of marriage counseling and literature and research, and his contention was you have to have 5 positives for every to make up for the negative. If you say anything negative to your partner, boy, does that stick, he says. So you have to give him 5 compliments to make up for the negative to kind of wipe that out. So even more than 3 to 1 in that world. So that's an easy sell here.
Great.
So let's move on to how often you need to do this and how you do this.
Mm-hmm. So we want to start with cultivating gratitude as frequently as possible to really form a new habit. And I think of gratitude as being broken up into 2 components. One, developing an attitude, and second, developing a regular practice. Mm-hmm. So cultivating an attitude of gratitude is really a shift in thinking, that instead of noticing or overly focusing on those negative things, we start to pay attention to those things that maybe we normally take for granted. And it's this change in thinking that allows us to really notice and stay connected to those things that are most meaningful and most joy-producing in our life. You could notice the mundane things, like, oh, it's a sunny day today, to noticing maybe some of those gifts that are happening. Oh, somebody bought me a cup of coffee. To really noticing those things of wonder. Oh, looking up maybe through that telescope into the Milky Way and noticing that wonder. And then starting a practice. And I'm sure we'll talk about some different ways to really engage in various forms of a gratitude practice.
Going back to your 3 to 1, you think people tend to just look around and just don't take in all the great things around them, and they tend to focus on, oh, look at that stoplight's taking so long, this red light's driving me nuts, and whatever, that my gums taste wore out or whatever.
Yeah, so if we think about that negativity bias of the brain, 2 things are kind of working against us. One, we, for survival reasons as a human species, needed to look for what was wrong and focus on it and try to problem solve. That takes up a lot of mental space. Mm-hmm. The second thing, as humans, we have so much information coming in that we have to simplify it and categorize it. So through doing that, we may miss all the wonderful things that are happening in the moment. So in a sense, gratitude is about retraining our brain to stop and notice. And really at its core, it's also a mindfulness practice, that in order to notice those good things that are happening to us, we have to be mindful to really see them and really appreciate them. We can't just go through the motions. That's not what gratitude is.
But let's say you've got your clients and you have them set their alarm for 2:45 on their wristwatch, and at 2:45 goes off. That's a reminder. Be grateful. Do you have to have an attitude? Couldn't you just be reminded? Now think about what you're grateful for.
You could set a stopwatch, and that's a nice place to start, but long term that wouldn't be the best way to cultivate gratitude, because we also, what's most powerful is to look for naturally occurring things that are happening. And when they do happen, to stop, pause, and really soak them in. And maybe offer a silent moment of thanks. I think of Meister Eckhart's quote, he said, if the only prayer that you ever say in your whole life was thank you, that would suffice. So those small moments can really help cultivate that mental shift into that attitude of gratitude.
Sounds like savoring a good piece of candy. You know how people can just gulp their candy down, and then if they take their time and appreciate it, they'd probably eat less and enjoy it more.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's some similarity. You're talking about savoring the good things?
Savoring those things that are really positive that we may not have noticed. And that example of that piece of candy is also another way to practice, is imagining if our life didn't have those good things, what it would be like. If we didn't have that job, or we didn't have that spouse, or we didn't have those that warm coat that we're wearing on a cold day. Using that can also help amplify the sense of gratitude for things that maybe we've just started taking for granted.
Okay, let me be devil's advocate. I did a little of this, some of it, and know that I need your help. doctor because I wasn't always successful. But one of my problems I had was I would go, God, I can move all four of my limbs, I can walk. And the first time or second time I thought that, I did feel, I should be grateful. Some people in my stage of life can't do that. But then the fourth time I said it, it just got numb. It didn't bring me any emotion. How do you, I should be grateful every day for my health. But when I say it, it wears off because I've said it already.
Yeah, and you speak to an important point, and that is that when we're practicing gratitude, it's important to mix it up. Research shows that when people are asked to be grateful and they're doing it too frequently, or for example, they're doing it too repetitively on one thing, such as your health, it loses its emotional meaning.
Yeah.
And so we want to have a variety of different ways to practice gratitude, but also look for different things that we can be grateful for.
Okay. Maybe.
And that is, research shows that is what is most powerful in boosting some of those emotional and physical health benefits. Because otherwise we're just going through the motions.
Yeah, and I did feel that some. If I don't do it for a while and do it, it's a little more powerful. But I don't think the health thing for me will ever be as powerful as the first time I realized it. Could it be? If I once a week realized it?
It could. And you could do, for example, a mini experiment on if I didn't have my health, how I might take my health for granted, or some people even, it's a little morbid, but face their mortality, and the fact that at some point we're all gonna go to the other side, and then that also can maybe bring to the forefront that health that you are enjoying currently and being even more grateful for it.
This is pretty existential, but how about just gratitude for being alive? Does that, you ever heard of that? Do you do that? Yes,
and that speaks to that sense of wonderment that gratitude can tap into. The wonderment of being alive in this body that works in so many miraculous ways that we don't consciously have to, for example, control our breathing or control our circulatory system or our ambulation.
You know, I know you and want you to tell us how to do this, but I think it'd be helpful to, if you could do it right now, give an example of what it sounds like if you list things you're grateful for. Would you be willing to do that?
Sure. So the first way to really get in touch with gratitude is to think about a time that you did this naturally. And you can think back to a time in your life that was one of the most beautiful, enjoyable, satisfying experiences. And you could bring it into the forefront of your mind and notice the colors, the sounds, the smells, the textures of it. And then notice if gratitude was part of it. And for many people, they will say, yes, gratitude was part of this moment. And part of why that memory comes to mind so strongly is that gratitude was there. As gratitude in the moment helps it more strongly get embedded in your memory.
That's helpful, but I was referring to is, can you give us an example of you or some client or whatever, what their gratitude might sound like? Do they list a bunch of things, like 10 things? Do they just think of one thing? And how does it work? When I have a client start a gratitude practice, I'll ask them to list 5 things each day that they're grateful for. And I was working with a woman recently that was doing this, and she started to notice some of the basic resources that she had. Her house, running water, her children, warm socks, and she did this daily. But then what she noticed started to happen is that organically in the moment when something stressful happened, she was able to step out of that irritation or frustration and reconnect with that gratitude. So for example, she was stressed and trying to help her son do some homework.
and it was very it was very tense. And her automatic response in the past had been getting irritated and frustrated. But with this gratitude practice, because she had been practicing it daily and was building a new pathway of responses, she was able to stop and breathe and just feel grateful for her son. And in that moment, in that place of connecting to something more positive, she was able to choose a different response. And she breathed and she sat down and she was able to kind of re-regulate herself and be much more effective in helping him do his homework.
If your spouse is aggravating you, and you think, there she goes again. If you think, but you know what's wonderful about her, or what I appreciate, that'll mitigate your anger at the moment. So,
definitely, Dick. And you had mentioned John Gottman's research on the 5 positive to every negative. There has been some very interesting research on just gratitude and happiness with your spouse. So not only being appreciative for the small things that they did, they took the trash out, but also the qualities that exist within them that you chose when you agreed to marry them. So saying it mentally to yourself can help you stay engaged in a positive way, less likely to lash out or get angry with them. But also it can help foster more emotional intimacy with your partner when you're doing that gratitude practice.
Not out loud so your partner hears you, but you're doing it in your own head. You're thinking, God, I'm so grateful that Bonnie does these wonderful things, and she's so kind, and she's such a good volleyball player, or whatever it is. And you go through this list that makes you predisposed to being more generous when things aren't so good.
Yes, because it connects you with a larger perspective on this person. It gets you outside that current moment where something irritating might be happening. And it connects you with the larger story of your relationship and maybe back to that commitment that you made when you were married. So it gives you more choice in that moment of how to respond. And we know from the field of positive psychology, when we're in a place of positive emotion, like joy or gratitude, we tend to be much more effective in our responses. We respond.
We don't snap. We don't act with anger.
Right. We can respond in a calmer, more neutral or loving way, and that's just going to help really strengthen a marital bond or any kind of bond that we're in, connection that we're in.
Okay. Off the record, what percentage of people in a marriage do you think do this? Do you think they go, let me think of all the wonderful things about my partner and list them and keep remembering them?
Well, I hope, Dick, after listening to this podcast, that statistic will increase.
Yeah. And that's
right.
one tool that you can control without your spouse doing anything to make you happier in your marriage.
Exactly. Right. I think there's growing awareness, but certainly a critical component to being satisfied in a marriage or any relationship.
Okay. So getting back to the practice of gratitude, that will do all these good things you talked about in the beginning. I'm hearing write down. Did I hear you say 5 things a day? I don't know if I heard you or assumed that. Yeah,
Dick. So a first place to start in creating that gratitude practice is doing something called a gratitude journal. And research shows that this is a nice way of creating those new pathways of gratitude. So 1, writing down 5 things a day that you're grateful for. It doesn't matter what time of day, morning,
why write
evening.
them down? Why don't you just
Research shows that it helps amplify the effects of the gratitude practice, because by writing it down, we're taking a moment to pause and really reflect on it. Versus if we think about it, that could just take a millisecond. If we're writing, it's several seconds. And to really reflect on the reasons why you're grateful for it while you're writing it down. The second thing is...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'd just like to amplify. How do we reflect on it? Let's say you think, I'm so grateful for my lovely apartment. Then how do you reflect on that?
You can reflect by taking a few moments to feel a sense of appreciation for that gift, whether it's the apartment or the job, and think about its value to you, and the fact that it is really a gift
so
that
you're really
you have in your life.
savoring this.
Yep, for a few seconds.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And the second thing is that after you're doing this for a few days, you don't have to keep it up every day. And it's actually, going back to your point, that it's actually more effective if you go down to 1 to 2 times a week with writing it in a gratitude journal.
5 things still?
5 things.
Okay.
You could go down to 3, but 3 to 5, I would say, at least once a week.
What if you really get going, you get 12 or 13? Is that good or not? Are you getting too promiscuous with that?
That's okay. You could be on a roll.
Okay.
Appreciation rampage, I call it.
Yeah. Okay.
And for some people, writing in a journal doesn't work for them, so there are some wonderful apps out there where you can write down that list, but even take some photographs of those things that you're grateful for. And some apps even have a place where you can record yourself saying them. So as you get rolling with this, find a way that works for you. And these apps then allow you at the end of the month, the end of the year, to look back over everything with all the photos. And
do you have one?
I don't. Yeah, I'm old-fashioned with the journal that I use.
Can you recommend one? Or should just go gratitude apps?
If you just look gratitude, there are several that are free and several that you pay for.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I lost track. Where are we now?
So we were talking about the daily gratitude journal.
Yes.
And research shows that it's important as you get rolling to mix it up. Back to your point that you don't want it to feel mundane or repetitive. So there are other things that you can do to keep this regular practice of gratitude going. Some people use a gratitude jar where they write down on a slip of paper things they're grateful for and put it in that jar that they can review at the end of the month or end of the year. Some people will establish a gratitude practice at dinner time with their family as a way to teach their children about gratitude, and they'll share 1 or 2 things that they're grateful for.
Okay. Now, I went to a workshop. For CEU credits as a therapist, I have to go to these workshops. I went to one on happiness. And Lynn Johnson, who did a great job conducting that and has written books on this, he said, if you really want to be happy, write a letter to someone of appreciation, how grateful you are there in your life. Write it, frame it, and go knock on their door and hand it to them. I couldn't do that. But he says, I guarantee you, science says this will be helpful. Do you go that far?
Science does show that it's helpful. There was a study by Seligman and Stein in 2005 where they studied over 400 participants and had them do this very thing. And they compared it against 4 other quote-unquote happiness exercises. And they found that this gratitude visit where they wrote a letter and they hand-delivered it to the person was by far the best thing at promoting happiness. Not just at that time, but also the effects of that in terms of happiness lingered to a month later. So there is...
between us, have you ever done that?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Mm-hmm.
I figured you'd say no, but it's a good idea. How'd it go?
What they showed in the study, that is what I did, is to contact somebody who had made a really meaningful contribution in your life, but you hadn't thanked them. And if we think about our course of our life and all the people who have helped us along the way, probably would really feel overcome with gratitude. So for me personally, I thought of a mentor in graduate school who I never properly thanked, that only many years later I realized had really been a pivotal person in launching my career. So I wrote this letter, and similar to what the research literature recommends, I not only thanked her, but I also said specifically what she did and the ways in which it was so meaningful to me. And when we're doing these letters of appreciation, the more detail we can give, the more powerful it is for the other person, as well as I think the more meaningful it is for us, because it causes us to reflect specifically on the contribution that this person made in our life.
Wow. You did it once? Just once?
Once recently.
Twice then in your life? Or?
I have done it several times over the course of my life.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. My reaction, I don't think, would be uncommon. Like, come on, deliver them in a frame thing that they'll think I'm kind of loony. No?
Hopefully not. And the reaction I've received, and I've seen other people receive, is is one of such deep appreciation, because it's often very rare that we have these opportunities to receive that kind of gift.
Yes.
Right, that somebody is telling us specifically how what we did meant so much to them.
Yeah, no, that
so
makes sense.
The person I delivered it to even said, "Okay, pause. I'm going to savor this. Let's go slower." And this person really relished that that gift.
I wonder who enjoyed it more, you or them? Well, both of you.
Both of us, probably.
Now, what about adversity? Let's say you have some pretty bad news. You're now a month into post-diagnosis of cancer, or some divorce, or some negative life event. Can gratitude be helpful?
Yes, and I think this is where the gratitude practice shines, that through practicing it regularly, it allows us to be more resilient in those moments. And gratitude isn't just positivity or Pollyanna-ish, oh, life is wonderful. No, it's saying in the fullness of life where there's a lot of suffering and heartache, gratitude allows me to make it through. And it's a way of really seeing differently a challenging circumstance. So it allows us to see the big picture and feel less burdened by any setbacks that we're having in that moment.
Well, let's take it to a situation. Let's say you're going through a divorce and it wasn't your choice, and you're 2 months into the process. And what kind of things, I mean, I understand if you're a more positive person, everything's better, but would you still use gratitude as a daily way to help yourself so that you don't suffer as much?
Yes, and I think it's a lifeline that we can hold on to, especially during those challenging times. So being grateful for the struggle, for what you may be learning from this difficult situation, how you might be growing, can allow you to keep that sense of perspective and maybe that sense of hope that although it's tough, it doesn't always have to be this way, or I can make it through, or out of this, I'm going to become a better person. So, and that it's a choice in those moments. We can feel victimized and bowled over by those challenging situations, or we can try to navigate them with a little bit of grace and use what we've learned from that to become a better person and maybe even help others.
Even while we're suffering, I mean, or in general? Well, tell me about how it affects you with others if you have a gratitude practice.
That it affects us with others, that if we can maintain some sense of gratitude in those challenging moments, we can be a beacon of hope to others. That if we can figure out a way to move through, for example, that painful divorce, to recreating our life and maybe searching for love again, that there are many other people on the planet going through that, and that it may offer hope in unexpected ways that we can't even imagine to others.
My good friend, who has been the president of the Gratefulness Network, I said, well, Dutch, what are you doing about your gratitude? I don't see you writing journals all the time. And he said, no, I don't do journals. I just am constantly being grateful in my mind as the day goes on. Is that an elevated state of gratitude?
Yes, and some people refer to it as waking up to life. That gratitude has a potential of unlocking the fullness of life and turning what we already have into more. So the practice could be looking throughout our day, and when something positive happens, to stop and begin to really soak that in. And you want to maybe think about soaking it into your heart or the back of your heart, almost like a healing or soothing balm or warm sunlight. And to stay with that appreciation for that thing for at least 10 to 15 seconds.
Well, how do you do that in life? I mean, do you say, hold on, after someone says something, I want to take it in? I mean, do you have 15 seconds to do that?
You can do it in the moment if possible, and using the breath to help you of really breathing in the sensation and really enriching that experience by noticing, using all your senses, what is happening and what it feels like or sounds like or smells like or tastes like. And sometimes we are busy. So another way to do it is to reflect back on that experience later in the day when you have a few minutes, and really revel in it and relish it. Once again, using all your senses and really trying to absorb it into your heart, into your body, like a sponge soaking in water.
The word wow comes to me. What if something nice happens to you and you think to yourself, wow? Wouldn't that help?
That would be a cue to do this practice. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, wow. So, in our closing moments, is there anything about gratitude that you want to emphasize, reiterate, that you think is an important takeaway before we finish?
The philosopher Lao Tzu said about gratitude, be content with what you have, rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. And I think that quote sums up the benefits and practice of gratitude, that through gratitude we realize in this moment that this present moment is perfect, just in its microscopic moment. And through that we can really help us craft the kind of lives that we're wanting.
And is there any book, anything on the net that you recommend if people want to learn more about this?
There is a great book called Attitudes of Gratitude, and there is an app. You had asked about apps. The Gratitude Journal is one that comes highly recommended. So those are two that can really be of benefit to people.
Well, I thank you so much for filling us in. It's a very interesting and worthwhile topic, and I hope you'll join us on the next edition of Insights. And remember, you can find all our podcasts at dickgoldbergradio.com or search for Dick Goldberg at iTunes or YouTube.